What's up, Taiwan? I'm Eric Gao with 10 minutes of news from here in Taiwan and around the world. Starting off with international news, Russian President Vladimir Putin has welcomed China's peace plan for the war in Ukraine. This was the result of Chinese President Xi Jinping's two-day visit to Moscow. But critics say China's self-declared role as international peace broker is not as impartial as it may seem. Joyce Zheng reports.
China's leader Xi Jinping at the Kremlin on Tuesday, meeting with Russian counterpart President Vladimir Putin. It's the second day of Xi's state visit to Moscow. This is the Chinese leader's first trip to Russia since the country invaded Ukraine last year. On the agenda, Beijing's 12-point peace plan for the war. Notably absent from the proposal is any requirement for Russia to withdraw its troops from Ukraine. Putin has welcomed the plan, saying it, quote, correlates to the point of view of the Russian Federation.
За углубление российско-китайского всеобъемлющего партнерства и стратегического взаимодействия.
为深化俄中全面战略协作伙伴关系.
За процветание и благополучие народов России и КНР.
为了俄罗斯和中国人民繁荣昌盛.
干杯.
干杯.
Despite the two leaders toasting their friendship, Beijing has claimed to be a neutral party when it comes to the war in Ukraine. It's a position many countries in the West view with extreme skepticism. In response to the meeting in Moscow, the U.S. says China has not shown any meaningful impartiality in its efforts to negotiate peace.
I don't think you can reasonably look at China as impartial in any way. They haven't condemned this. In this invasion. They haven't stopped buying Russian oil and Russian energy. So now if China wants to play a constructive role here in this conflict, then they ought to press Russia to pull its troops out of Ukraine and Ukrainian sovereign territory. They should urge President Putin to cease bombing cities, hospitals, and schools, to stop the war crimes and the atrocities, and end the war today.
By Tuesday evening in Moscow, Putin and Xi had signed two joint pacts on stronger economic ties and energy cooperation. These agreements also come just days after the International Criminal Court issued an arrest warrant for Putin for war crimes in Ukraine, a detail left out of the Chinese state-run media coverage of Xi's visit. Beijing's ties with Moscow have only become more important given continued U.S.-led sanctions on Russia since the beginning of the war. This places Xi, who has just been handed an unprecedented third term as president, in the driver's seat in his proclaimed friendship with Putin.
He also uses the word trust a lot, which itself I think is a little bit, revealing in that the relationship so far has not really been based on trust. It's based on a coincidence of interests. Russia is the junior partner in the relationship between the two, that it means that the so-called no limits partnership essentially does have limits, but those limits increasingly are set by Beijing, and the message is, well, you're just going to have to trust us.
Following his Moscow trip, Xi is reportedly set to hold a virtual meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky as Beijing continues working to position itself in the role of peacemaker. But despite China's messages of peace and Putin's praise for the country's plan, there is still little sign of a diplomatic breakthrough over Ukraine. Eason Pan and Joyce Zhen for TaiwanPlus.
Meanwhile, Japanese Prime Minister Kishida Fumio has met with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky during a surprise visit to Kyiv. Kishida is the final G7 head of state to visit Ukraine since Russia's invasion. He pledged an additional $30 million in non-lethal aid to the country through a NATO trust fund. He also promised $470 million to help Ukraine with energy and other needs. Kishida said he invited Zelensky to virtually join the upcoming G7 summit, which will take place in Hiroshima in May. Now sports. Japan has won the 2023 World Baseball Classic, beating Team USA 3-2 in the finals in Miami. Japan led the game since the second inning. At the top of the ninth, Japanese two-way player Ohtani Shohei was given the task of wrapping up the match. After 2 outs, Ohtani faced off against his LA Angels teammate Mike Trout. Ohtani struck out Trout, clinching Team Japan's third WBC win. Vietnam has made its largest ivory smuggling bust in years. Authorities discovered 7 metric tons of ivory in a shipping container earlier this week. The elephant tusks were originally from Angola and had passed through Singapore. Vietnam's government is investigating the case. The latest seizure follows the discovery of 600 kilograms of smuggled ivory in Vietnam last month. In Taiwan news, the government is creating a system for settling disputes between landlords and tenants over rent deposits. Most rental units in Taiwan are not officially registered, which can make it hard to hold landlords accountable. John Van Trieste has this story.
Taiwan's millions of apartment renters could soon get more legal protection. The Interior Ministry says it's putting together a system that will help tenants get their deposits back. It's a victory for housing advocates and lawmakers who've backed the idea.
其实英国在最近这几年开始实施，也就是说，它有一个公正的第三方来保管这个押金。到时候解除租约的时候，有纠纷的时候，由这个公正的第三方来决定如何退还这个押金，是否退还这个押金。
It's an idea with plenty of popular support.
第三方公证的话，可以比较有效去保证说，有些状况是可能是房东说的算。
房东好不好跟房客好不好，有时候是很看运气的一件事。确实，如果放在第三方会比较安心。
But backers of this system say there's one major problem to overcome before it can be effective. According to different estimates, anywhere from 70 to 90% of rental units in Taiwan are under the table with no tax registration. The system's supporters say knowing who rents out what property is important. They recommend a temporary tax amnesty so landlords will be willing to come forward and register with the government, followed by a crackdown on landlords who don't.
不要增加太多税负负担的一个制度的一个设计，鼓励房东出来就是如实的申报，再进行就是说一个棍棒的一个督促，让这样的租屋市场就是可以如实的去登录跟揭露。
There's also the question of who the third party will be. Banks have had little interest in handling deposits because the amounts involved are small. But while the new system may be a way off, the government says it will take the first steps to set it up in the coming months. Alex Chen and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
The ongoing drought and water shutoff in southern Taiwan has caused huge losses to the local agricultural industry. Tea leaves are drying up and fruits are not reaching maturity. This is affecting crop yields and farmers' incomes. According to local authorities, agricultural losses across 3 southern areas are currently around $1.8 million. To conserve water, the government has cut off irrigation to several farms. This has caused some farmers to resort to extreme measures to try and get a hold of water. Droughts and other extreme weather events are becoming more severe and unpredictable here in Taiwan. Authorities say they are working on measures to offer a lifeline to farmers if the drought continues throughout the year.
5月的梅雨是不是能够来到还不确定。那7月、8月是不是有台风也不确定。那因此必须提早预警，提早部署。
In somewhat cheerier agricultural news, fruit exports from Taiwan's eastern Taitung County to China could be set to resume. Taitung's deputy chief, Wang Zihui, is due to head to China soon. He hopes to broker a deal that would see local farmers' sugar apples regain access to the Chinese market. The fruit was banned by Beijing 2 years ago after Chinese authorities said they found pests in the shipments from Taiwan. But Taiwan's government says the bans on sugar apples and other fruits are politically motivated. Taitung's farmers say they are looking forward to regaining access to the Chinese market.
价格已经这么差了，而且供应世家这2年都已经价格非常低廉，希望如果还有机会的话，还可以再回到以前的那个价格。
Thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. Remember to download the TaiwanPlus app for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally, enjoy these images of a seaside art installation in eastern Taiwan's Taitung County. I'm Eric Gao. Take care and see you next time.
One, two, three. 1, 2, 3. Okay. For more stories from here in Taiwan and around the world, please make sure to download the TaiwanPlus app.